So today I'm speaking with Brooke Jamison, who's the Chief Partnership Officer and Head of the Americas Liaison Office of the International Fund for Agricultural Development. The Americas Liaison Office is responsible for IFAD's engagement and partnerships with governmental, legislative, civil society, philanthropic, and private sector entities in the United States and Canada, as well as with other multilateral organizations, such as development banks and the International Monetary Fund. Ms. Jamison joined IFAD in 2024, quite recently, prior to which she served as Associate Administrator of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service, where she oversaw the USDA's Foreign Service and Global Programming. And this week she's visiting Ottawa, Canada's national capital, to speak with officials from Global Affairs Canada about this country's important role in helping IFAD to promote prosperity, food security, and resilience by connecting rural people to the finance, markets, technology, and knowledge they need to address their biggest challenges. So, let me start by saying welcome to Ottawa.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my first time in Ottawa. I've been to Montreal, I've been to British Columbia, but I've never been to Ottawa.
Oh, well, you're very much welcome. And congratulations on your recent appointment as a Chief Partnership Officer and Head of the office, the Americas Liaison Office. Can you tell us a bit more about the role of your office at IFAD?
Of course. So IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development, we are both a United Nations agency and an international financing institution. And we are a member-driven body. So we have 180 member states, Canada being one of our most active member states. And so my job is to liaise with two of the member states, both Canada and the United States, representing IFAD in those two countries with that list of organizations that you listed out, the governments, the nonprofit community, organizations like Farm Radio, partners that we work with in the field. And so, to try to build those relationships and bring in these partnerships to help on our projects all over the world. So part of it is funding. Some of it is finding solid partners who can bring technical knowledge to the projects that we're implementing in developing countries.
Wonderful. Now, I know that of the world's poorest people, 3/4 of them, 3 out of 4, live in rural areas of developing countries. And most of them depend on agriculture for their livelihoods. And they produce much of the food we eat. And yet, the very people growing so much of the food in the world are also suffering often malnutrition or inadequate nutrition.
Right.
It's not an easy job to be a farmer. Many rural people living in poverty, they face massive economic, social, and environmental challenges from climate change, food insecurity, inequality, conflict, lack of access to resources. So what is the main role for IFAD in helping small-scale farmers address these big challenges and boost their agricultural productivity and sort of exit the poverty they're facing?
Right. So this is IFAD's space. So our tagline is investing in rural people. And so these are the only people in the world we're helping, the ones who live at kind of the last mile, we say. So none of our projects are easy to get to. You will be in a car on a bumpy dirt road to get to any of our projects because these are the people that need it the most. They're very much forgotten. They're forgotten by the NGO community oftentimes. They're forgotten by some of the big international development organizations. And so we are often operating in this space where nobody else is. And so we are bringing not just investment. We do invest. We bring grants and loans to communities and cooperatives and help form cooperatives and things of these smallholder farmers, but we also bring other entities. We bring in private sector, we bring in other financing from maybe the Ministry of Finance, from from foundations and things of that nature. So we are trying to not just go there and do the project, but to bring in all these other entities to help the folks who are often need it the most, like you said, but are so far away from resources that they nearly never get help.
So important. Traditionally, Canada, you mentioned Canada is one of the important member states, and what has been Canada's main contribution and role to the work.
Yes, Canada is one of the top 10 leading donors to IFAD. And over the years, Canada not only gives, an annual fund, but they have also given loans, it's very low interest loans, to focus on specific projects like climate, like bringing private sector to some of these communities so that you can build a supply chain. Because, if these farmers are able to be successful and have a buyer, then they're making real money. And so when you build a supply chain to the larger entities, they will be successful. So Canada is very, very focused, I think, on investing in this long-term growth. What we do is we don't come into the middle of a crisis and bring in bags of rice. We're there to prevent these problems in the first place. And so we're there to work with the community, understand their needs, bring in the financing, bring in the support that's needed, and invest for the long term. So a lot of our loans, they're 20-year loans, they're 30-year loans, and the rates are so low. Because the idea is we're not there to make a buck, we're there to help people be successful. And I feel like Canada, more than some other donor countries, understands the long-term investment, understands that sometimes it takes time. They call it patience. Capital. In the finance world, you need patient capital that is willing to wait many years for your repayment, but that's sometimes what it takes. And then Canada is unique because the idea of these cooperatives was born here. And so it's one of those things that helps smallholder farmers everywhere. But most people don't even understand that concept till you bring it to them. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, if we join together, we have economies of scale, we have negotiating power, we are able to help each other and achieve more success together than we ever would have alone. And so these kind of concepts, I think, are also Canadian in the history, but we've now used these concepts to help folks all over the world.
Yeah. Well, and building that trust, building that cooperative spirit, and it takes time, and it takes
Absolutely.
patience, as you're saying, and that it's great to know there's that concessional and patient financing available. And what are you hoping to see from Canada in the future? You're just here this morning meeting with officials at Global Affairs Canada. What role do you see Canada playing in the future?
Well, we're hoping that Canada has an even bigger leadership role. There is a movement in a lot of the donor countries to pull back from foreign aid, to reassess foreign aid. And, it's always important to assess, to make sure you're doing it right and things of that nature. But I think, we have had a partnership with Canada where they understand that what we do is long-term investment for long-term success. And so we're hoping that Canada can take that leadership role so that when we make the investments together, it'll last.
And so, you're here with us, Farm Radio International. We've done some really good work together, and Farm Radio International, I think, as you know, is all about strengthening those communication channels so that small-scale farmers have the information they need to make the best decisions about their farms, understand the market, and be aware of the weather. Also, farmers' voices need to get heard, and they need to have opportunities to express their needs and their experiences. And so in working with Farm Radio and IFAD, what do you see as the connection between communication services and success of the financing strategies and working with...
Well, as you describe it, it goes both ways.
Right.
And so there's all this new research, there's new technologies, there's new ways of doing things that universities all over the world are discovering and pioneering. And yes, we need to get it out. Farmers often, especially if there's a financial backer, will try new things and they'll see if that's going to work. But they learn about it initially, often from the radio. They learn about it from, their friends who have heard about this new way of doing things. And so it is important that we get that information out there, that people start thinking about how do I diversify my crops, make it more nutritious, make it, so that the soils are not depleted if you do some different cropping and things like that. There are ways to do these things, but they're not inborn. Like, you have to actually, the research will tell you these things. So radio is very, very effective in getting those messages out. And then for like me and my job, we need storytelling. I mean, the way the government of Canada, the way any government is going to care is when you tell the story. And so it is so important. The Rural Voices project that we did together helps with that storytelling. Like, I am able to send a link and say, here's the story from the country about this project, and it's in the voice of the actual farmer who tells the story.
Right.
And that is far more powerful than me sitting in an office across the table kind of just trying to convince somebody. And so it goes both ways to hear from people and their experiences.
We're in times of constrained resources, more constraints in these times in particular. So we're looking for new innovative ways to finance, unlock more investment. So what are some approaches there, and is there anything that a role you're seeing Canada play in sort of helping to unlock more investments from unconventional sources?
Absolutely. So there's a word in the finance community, which my background is in agriculture and in development, so finance is kind of a language I'm learning.
Okay.
But there's a term called crowding in. Everybody's heard of crowding out. We know what crowding out means, that, that's not good usually. Crowding in finance terms, means that when you put in a government investment, so, IFAD takes money from governments, and it actually brings the private sector along, because now the risk is not as great, because there's someone else putting in some money, and then the private sector can follow along and kind of see what's going on, and then you can, you put in the investment, you build the product, you make the supply chains, whatever it is you're doing, and then private industry wants your product, and then you've built something that will last. So the loan gets paid back, we walk away, we go to a different community, we make an investment over there. Meanwhile, that business is now standing on its own. They have buyers, they have markets. And so this idea of crowding in, which was a new concept that I had never heard, it over and over again, they've seen it works. So this is what we're very much hoping. Even if there are constrained resources, we can still do this. We can still provide these loans. We can still crowd in, because it's a shorter term investment, and then they take care of themselves. The private sector actually takes over. They become a successful agribusiness.
Right. So the more public finance can cover that risky phase.
Yes.
So that others, financiers, have confidence that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's my new favorite finance term.
That's good. So Canada puts a strong emphasis in its international development cooperation efforts on gender equality and women's rights, and I know that's also something that IFAD prioritizes.
Yep.
So how is it connected to your other goals? Why is it such a central part of IFAD's approach?
Yeah, so our projects, that we layer a lot of our priorities. So we focus on youth, we focus on gender and empowering women, we focus on climate. But you can do all of those things in one project a lot of the time. So gender is a very, very strong component of nearly all of the projects we are working on. We are trying to get women the business skills they need to be successful. We're trying to get women involved in the decision making. We're trying to, empower them to be a leader in their community, because we know, both from the data, but also because we know from intuition, that when women are involved, they make good decisions. They make decisions that support families, that support communities, that will lead to long-term growth. And so we always want women at the table when we're designing our projects, when we're implementing our projects. They are just more successful when they're there. And the data backs it up. It's not just me saying it.
Good, excellent. And then young people, you mentioned youth and, Farm Radio works in Africa, and there's a lot of talk about youth dividend, the large number of portion of the population that is young and ready to explore food system related work and farming related work, but might have the energy, might have the skills, might have the talent. They're young, and accessing financing can be so challenging. Is there anything that IFAD can do to sort of help remove that barrier for young people?
Well, we bring the money.
Right,
Yes, we
right.
bring this. This is what we do.
Okay.
We bring the investment, and then we also teach the skills.
Okay.
So again, we're not a bank, even though a lot of our funding does need to be paid back. Not all of it. In very, very fragile places, we are only focused on grants. But in a place where things are growing, there's potential, it tends to be a loan, and it has to be eventually paid back at very good terms and all these other things. But that's how you get the youth involved is, again, you're putting the money down, you're giving them capital, because farmers everywhere, whether they're in Canada or in Kenya, they need capital investment. You can't buy seeds, you can't buy inputs, you can't, buy a tractor, you can't, cold storage, solar, you name the thing,
Needs money.
you need money. And so you need that investment. And of course, we know you put in the investment and then you can make a profit eventually. And your first few years of farming anywhere in the world are not profitable. So you need that patient capital, which is what we bring, is that patient capital. But the part of it is the technical assistance for the young people. We're teaching business skills. I mean, that's not intuitive.
No.
How to keep the books, how to make a profit, how to do these calculations, that is not intuitive. How to work with a bank. Because our goal, of course, is for them to pay it back, and then they become a standalone business, and then they seek funding from banks, and they do the loans, and they do it all themselves. So these are skills no one is born with, and they're not really teaching in anybody's school. My school certainly didn't teach it. And so we teach these kinds of skills as well, because you're not going to survive. You can be a subsistence farmer and maybe survive, but we want people to thrive. Right. We want people to make money, to support their communities, to stay in their communities, to not feel like they have to migrate to cities or migrate to faraway lands, because at the end of the day, people want to stay in their communities anyway. So if you give them opportunities, they will. They will. And and it's farming and producing food, there's a lot of pride involved in that. And so when you can feed your community and you can make money from that, people will stay, they will do well. And so this is our niche. This is what we do. And so we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do it better and how to get to as many people as we can.
Fantastic. Well, Brooke Jamison, thank you so much for spending some time and talking about IFAD's really important work and some of what Canada can contribute to that, and indeed Farm Radio International can contribute to that. Thanks for your time.
And I want to thank Farm Radio for your partnership, because this has been a very, very good partnership on both sides, because I think you guys help tell the story in a way we can't tell the story, but you get that information out. And that is important, because farmers still listen to radio. That is important. Sometimes they can't get a signal on their phone. There's no newspaper. There's no internet, but the radio always works. And so I think you guys are some of the key players in making this work. So I appreciate this partnership.